Welcome to Belonging Reimagined. I'm your host, Dr. Mona. As a mental health therapist, professor, and researcher, I guide folks in owning their belonging journey and exploring barriers to belonging. In this podcast, I explore real stories with phenomenal guests about how to experience both interconnection and interdependence. And my hope for you is that you learn ways to experience more connection in the world around you and the world within yourself. We don't have to do this life thing alone. You're right where you belong. Welcome back to Belonging Reimagined, everyone. We have two therapists from Nour Counseling on the show today. We have Belonging Reimagined podcast veteran, Kristin Reddick, who joined us several months ago, actually for a really popular episode on belonging and workplace trauma. Really moving, really resonated with a lot of folks. And we have Danay Scott on the show today, who's a newbie here, but certainly not new in the field, knows her stuff. And I got to tell you, these two, first of all, superstars. I was so excited when y'all came over a few months ago to one of our quarterly company parties that we always have at my house. And we were just chatting it up about, oh, Danay, your hair looks like this today. Kristin, oh, I love your new style that you're doing. You know, mine was looking some different kind of way that day because, you know, that's how we do. We get to play with our hair in all different kinds of ways. And, you know, other people started joining the conversation from like across the kitchen kind of thing, you know, but it was really like kitchen talk. We were just standing around in the kitchen, chatting in front of the stove, eating whatever we could stuff our faces with that day. And I said, okay, Pels, we got to stop right here because this conversation was going deep quickly about hair and our experiences with hair and, you know, really the challenges, but also the triumphs and the celebrations. And we started talking about cultural pride and all kinds of things. I said, we got to pause right here. Like it or not, y'all are coming on this show and we're going to hit record and continue this conversation. And so, you know, I just appreciate the candor and the transparency and just, you know, and your generosity in sharing your life experiences as we were chatting that day. And preemptively thanking you, which I know is rude for what we're getting ready to do right now, which is have what I know will be a rich discussion that's going to resonate with a lot of folks. I just love y'all both to pieces and appreciate your being here. So thank you for doing this.
Mona.
Of course, yes.
Love y'all so big. Look, we know that in society, we have these, we're going to dive right in. We have these certain kind of mainstream, we'll call them standards that define beauty, supposedly, right? Mm-hmm. And so many of us aren't even able to attain those standards, nor are they necessarily even desirable. I think that's the thing that gets missed a lot, right? Like, I don't want to necessarily look some certain kind of way. I like having my big curly hair and, you know, the way my body is shaped is kind of tall and lanky and lean. And I have like, you know, broad but narrow, you know, lean kind of shoulders and straight waist and straight hips. And when I look at my body and when I look at my hair, for me personally, I feel like an ancient Egyptian. I see myself reflected in hieroglyphics. I feel like one of the pharaohs, you know, and there's something about that feels royal to me, that feels ancient to me. And I feel like I'm carrying that kind of energy in my own body and through my hair. And yet, you know, we have these standards that are, you know, what do we think they're rooted in? Let's just throw out some words. Let me hear that from y'all. These standards that are out there right now.
They're Eurocentric one. I think that they're also steeped in the patriarchy because it's male focus is what the male gaze prefers, supposedly.
In quotes, supposedly. Right? In quotes.
Help me out, Danay. What are some other words for?
It's still related to those things, but the thing that comes to mind to me too is plain, right? I think when Mona was describing too, like my big curly hair, and I think sometimes when we talk about more people of color with our hair. Like sometimes when we do like different styles and stuff, and it's sometimes stated as like, you know, you're doing too much, or this is too, like always like too much. Like they want you to have the playing flat. Like you just, you know, no shade to people whose hair kind of falls like that. But like it has to be like this, just no kind of style, no type of thing. Like that's kind of the standard.
Again, on the quotes, right? Like how we're supposed to be showing up in some way or another.
And then I do think that there's definitely some racism steeped all the way through it. I think about the laws that were, you know, created just to talk about ethnic hair and how ethnic hair should show up in the workplace. So I do feel as if there's some racism definitely steeped in it.
Even using the word ethnic hair means like other than this standard, which is, as you were saying, Eurocentric, Kristin, and well, not Eurocentric, Kristin. As you were saying, Kristin, Eurocentric. Sorry, let me start that over. Steeped in, as you were saying, Kristin, Eurocentric standards. And yeah, I mean, really racism comes to mind for me also. Colonialism, white supremacy. You know, and we're not saying like white hair is bad hair. It's just not my hair. It's not your hair, Kristin. It's not your hair, Danay. It's not so many of us. We aren't able to get that. And also, the few times that I've had my hair, or the many times, what am I talking about? Let's be real. The many times I've had my hair, you know, chemically treated and they pull it like stick straight, I feel like I don't even look like myself. And that's just like, you know what I'm talking about? Like I'll wear my hair straight, but I still want that texture to it.
I mean, I was so pressed right now. I mean, she's a little poofy because of the rain, but I look right. Like, make sure you put the curls in it. Like I want the body, I want the volume. I don't want just that plain straight.
Yeah. And so for that though, you know, we can, just by way of being who we were born as, the way that we are, our bodies, which by the way includes our hair, can be devalued, can be marginalized, can be viewed as ugly or unattractive. And, you know, these messages started out early for me. I'm sure, you know, for all of us. Yeah, I'm seeing some nods over there. And so I'm wondering for y'all, you know, growing up, what kind of messages did y'all get, or what are some first memories that you might remember even about your hair and just the way that you are and the way that you bring yourself into the world just by way of your physicality? So we know in society, y'all, that in these mainstream standards, we'll call them mainstream, right? That they define beauty in certain kind of ways, right? And I'm wondering, like, when I say mainstream and the expectations around beauty, and we're gonna talk specifically about hair, what comes to mind for y'all? What words come to mind for you?
Yeah. For me, Eurocentric comes to mind. Try to think some other words. I think the patriarchy, as far as, you know, what's pleasing to the male gaze, supposedly. Help me out, Danay. What are some words that come to mind?
A word that came to mind to me was just being plain, right? That I think you can't have too much going on because it's seen as bad, or you're doing too much, and that just kind of, then it starts to equate you as a person. So yeah, plainness comes to mind for me, almost like, the sense of like just dull or boring, of like I can't do too much.
Yeah. And that is not even something that's necessarily desirable for me. And, you know, you and I know Kristin and I've talked about it, and I think Danay as well, that when the many times, let me go ahead and admit it right now, that I've had my hair chemically straightened. You know, I can get it later on after that first day to have some body to it. But that first day when it sticks straight and it's blowing in the wind and it's feeling some kind of way, and then I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, I don't look like myself. This is not what I was born to look like. And it's not like I can't do different things with my hair. I mean, I think one of the greatest things about, for me, particularly being North African, and having this wonderful texture to my hair, is all the different creative expressions I can have with it. But I've just now grown into that. And so I'm wondering, you know, I'm 51 years old now. That wasn't something that I just came into the world. Maybe I came into the world not thinking about, but go ahead.
I forgot another word that I wanted to mention, and that's racism. Especially when you think about all of the hair laws for ethnic hair,
Right.
That's definitely another word that
Yeah. Yeah. So racism, colonialism,
Yep.
white supremacy, these are things that definitely come up when we think about what mainstream means. It's like
Mhm.
mainstream is this, and every other kind of hair is, or even person is ethnic, right? It's like
Mhm.
othered, different in some kind of way. So when we talk about, you know, the messaging that we got when we were growing up, you know, for me, it was definitely not, I was not always in the place where I am now, which is still ever evolving. And I'm wondering for y'all, what are some of your first memories around your hair, or any messages that you got around it?
I think one of the first things that comes up for me, I remember a commercial for Just For Me. So it was the chemical
Wow.
relaxers
Mhm.
designed for little girls
Yep.
to straighten their hair.
Yep.
And I remember asking for, well, I'm going to admit this, I had a Jerry curl first. So I was about maybe 5 years old, I had a Jerry curl. But
Danae's
now,
face right now.
and
That's
do
like,
you know what a Jerry curl is, Danay? Do you know?
Danae's the baby
It was
here.
juicy. It was juicy, okay?
Juicy.
Then in my fourth grade year, so I was maybe like 9, I remember asking my mom for a chemical relaxer, and she did it. And I just remember that next day feeling like, oh my goodness, I look like the little girl from the Just For Me box. And like the friends around me was like, will you please stop shaking your head? But it was just a different experience. And I think it was the novelty of it. But as I grew older, my hair quickly told me it does not like chemicals. It was falling out. It was like, this is not for you. But I do remember the Jerry curl wave and then the Just For Me's. And so, yeah.
For me, like I think I quickly learned how the impact that, you know, societal messaging can impact us in generations, right? That my mom still to this day, right? She gets her relaxer, she likes it, you know, she gets her straightness. But I think from there, that's all she knew. So growing up, it was very much that was the routine. Time to come sit down, get your relaxer. You know, my mom never really knew much about natural hair. You know, families would make jokes of like, you know, their hair is nappy, you know, the kitchen, the BBs, right? When it was like, no, my hair is just tangled right now. We're not learning how to detangle your hair. I'm not learning how to embrace the curls. It's easier, right, to just deal with straight hair. So let's just slap the relaxer on, so we don't have to kind of deal with it. And so, yeah, I think I quickly learned at a young age, like that's what you're supposed to do. And I think I had to get used to of like having a certain length. I think black women, like black girls too, you know, at a young age can relate, I think, in a way, especially with history of relaxers of like hair not getting past a certain length. And you just kind of getting used to like either that ear or maybe shorter shoulder length. And I'm not saying everyone who does, but you know, me and I had a lot of other family members who had that experience of, you know, right here, and it's not going to grow anymore because, you know, they know, I know now, like it was just breaking off. It was damaged. That was not good for my hair. But we're trying to commend to this societal standard of supposed to just be just straight hair, nothing, no volume, nothing added to it. But yeah.
To our own detriment is the thing too.
Danae, out of
And
curiosity, you used a word that we use around our diaspora, and I was just curious, do you want to explain to people what the kitchen is?
Yeah. So your kitchen is like the back of your hair, right? Kind of like that. The edge is back there. For some
The
people,
nape of the
right,
neck.
that's when your hair can be a little tighter. Ironically enough, mine is where my curls are actually looser. The rest of my hair is more
Same.
tight. Yeah, but mine is like it's actually
Yeah.
looser back there. But
Yeah.
you know, some of my family, my nieces and stuff, it's tighter. So it might take more detangling, but we'll be like, ooh, that kitchen, you know, and they'll say beady beads, and beady beads is like, you know, the really small curls, but it's just probably just need to be tangled, need to be detangled. So yeah.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right. And there's other language too that, you know, we're still hearing people say
Yep.
the word dread and putting that in front of the word locks.
Yep.
And a lot of folks don't know, you know, that we move now towards saying locks and taking that word dread out for many reasons. Not only, you know, I don't know if one of y'all want to share some of the history behind that, or I'm happy to.
Oh, I will say just from personal experience, when I had my locks, I found myself correcting people often. Like, oh, I like your dreads, locks. Thank you. I like your dreads, locks. Thank you. It's the process of me locking them. They're not dreadful, because that name dreads came from the idea that they look dreadful or they are dreadful. I'm like, no, they're not dreadful. Some people, they may embrace the term dreads because it does have a long history. But for me, I preferred the term locks because it was the process of me locking my hair. which I am thinking I might lock it again. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and also that history of British soldiers, they believe that this might be part of the history of British soldiers being in Kenya and finding wounded or even dead Kenyan warriors and describing their hair as dreadful. And so again, that colonialism comes into play yet again, even in the languaging that's used to describe hair that's been internalized. So many people who are Black who have locks don't even know that history at all because, of course, history's been whitewashed, not even understanding that. And so I hear a lot of folks using the words dreads, and it's like, describing their own hair. And it's like, no, it's beautiful, not dreadful, as you said, Kristin. Danay, some of your memories with hair growing up in terms of the messaging about your own hair.
I feel like the things that stick out to me the most was high school, because that's when I learned about natural hair. Elementary and middle school was when I got my relaxers. I got my routine month relaxers, and it was just the thing. It was just like, okay, I have this. Ironically enough, my sister, she's a hairstylist, but my 8th grade year, she became natural, and I was like, oh my God, like this is fun. And I remember she kind of did my puff. That was my first time I ever had a puff. People don't know the context. Like usually when natural person who has natural curls, they do a puff. It's kind of like your ponytail or things like that kind of idea. And I was like, yeah, I want to be like you. I want my puff. And I remember she did it before I went to school. And I remember that was the first time I was just so happy with my hair. Right. Because I know from, like I said, from the relaxers, I know some people who have good experiences, great experiences. But for me, like that wasn't for my hair. It would never get past a certain length. It always looked uneven. My mom, like I said, that was what she knew. So that's what she did for me. But she didn't really know much of how to help me. So I was always okay. Like it is what it is. But when I had that puff, I was just like, I feel so beautiful. I remember taking pictures, probably still on my Facebook somewhere. But I was just so like excited. And I was like, I want to try this. And like when I got to high school, I probably didn't start until maybe 10th grade year, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to do the big chop. I cut my hair. And I remember, now there's some racism rooted into this about some of my classmates and how they did take to me being natural. But I do know some of them were very much like, oh my God, Danay, like this looks so good. And then of course, some people were also putting me on that pedestal of like, can we touch it? And what does it look like? So I also had to deal with that as well. And so, but I think kind of that transition of becoming natural was like for my own journey of like me learning to love my hair, because I feel like my own experience was just very much was like, this is just what you're supposed to do. Like you're supposed to get the relaxer. You're supposed to straighten it. You're supposed to wear it in this way. And that's it. Never really have fun with it. Of course, too, with the braids, but we can get on that later. But yeah.
And Kristin, I heard you talking about you might be locking your hair again sometime soon.
Yeah. I was telling Danay I'm considering it. So my first set of locks, I love them, but unfortunately I wasn't able to continue with my same loctician. And I had an attachment to my locks through that loctician, and it didn't feel right having someone else to do my retwist. And so I went maybe like 5 months without getting a retwist. And I felt as if I wasn't able to take care of my hair the way I wanted to take care of my hair. And so I did decide to cut my hair. I cut my own hair. It was very freeing also. I cut my own hair, and then I went and professionally had it cut. And you probably remember last year in May, it was shaved in the back, shaved on the side, and just a little bit on the top. And it's already grown back out to here. It grows really fast.
Down to your shoulders.
I was telling Kristin at the party, I was like, oh my God, your hair grows so fast.
And I've cut it myself, like my ends since then. My hair just grows very fast. And so some of the other messaging about my hair specifically that I remember growing up too is the idea of good hair. People around my sister and I would say that we had good hair because of the thickness or the length or the, what have you, versus, bad hair. So good hair versus bad hair, which I'm like, you have hair on your head. That's good hair. It's no good or bad hair. My hair loved heat. It loved to be heat treated or heat processed. At one point in time, it was heat trained. And so I was very, very easily able to maintain blowouts. It grew out as long as like mid back. It with just getting blowouts and keratin treatments. But I think it was the idea of what's good hair.
That heavy was on the quotes.
Yeah, it can, and I guess too, if I may say something, like I think too, to this podcast as well, Mona, right? Of like, we talk about the belongingness in hair. I think, especially in the Black and natural hair community, length retention is a big thing of like that sense of belongingness, right? Of do I have good hair or not if it can grow a certain length, right? You see many, which is to each his own, right? Of like the people who may shame someone of like, well, you can't get past this certain length. Or, well, they have, waist length hair. So what does it say about them versus me who can't get it past a certain length? And I think we also like put that sense of pressure on ourselves of like, if I can get this certain length, what does this mean? What does this say about me? Do I fit in? Like, all that type of stuff. If, that makes sense.
Yeah. Again, rooted in really internalized racism of like what we think of as good hair. And when I say we, I'm not talking about we as if I'm a Black woman. I'm not, but I have quote ethnic hair, we'll say, my Southern way, I'll say I have my ethnic hair. But what I mean by that though, as far as internalized racism is that, we go back to that initial thing we were talking about at the beginning of the show, which is what is the beauty standard and where does that come from? And it's that kind of plain hair, like you said, Danay, but also long, straight, kind of flat hair. It can be a little bit of body to it, but essentially just long, straight hair. Hey, nothing wrong with that if that's what suits you, right? Or if that's what you want to go for, but there has to be certain agency over it. Is when we're doing it. I think agency is the big part. Look, I've had really long, straight hair in the past with keratin treatments. And hey, I was flipping that wig. I loved how it fell on my head at times. It was thick and I could put a little body into it and it was easy. It was more of a lifestyle thing, back to Danay, your point around that too, around the ease. And but this agency part, it's not like, oh, I want to do this because I don't feel beautiful if my hair is not like this. It's more of like, this is just an additional form of expression for me. And I'm going to try this out for a minute, or however long I want, however long I please, but not because I feel like I'm unkept looking or unattractive or not beautiful if my hair is not like that. So it really goes back, I think, to that internalized racism of like, I have to fit in. I have to be like this. I have to meet this certain standard. And when you're talking about, that quote, good hair is part of it is rooted, no pun intended, on how long you can get your hair. It's like, but why does hair length have anything to do with what's good or bad?
Yep.
Right.
I mean, it's wild to me that we can really internalize these messages because it's like, if my hair is not even good or bad, I mean, my hair is not even good, right? Then am I good enough for this job? Am I going to be, quote, professional enough, which again, our standard terms of professionalism. Again, going back to our podcast from a few months ago, Kristin, on workplace trauma, professionalism, oftentimes the way we think of it, rooted in these mainstream racist, colonized, white, cis, hetero, normative, patriarchal values that might not align with any part of who we are, And so, we can really start to devalue ourselves and start really becoming an accomplice to these abusive messages.
Yes. And you know what? To that point, Mona, I think even within the natural hair community, and Danay hinted at it earlier, this conversation of curl pattern and what qualifies as a good curl pattern, again, air quotes, or good texture. So like people who may have 4C, they may get a lot of messages that, oh, your hair is tough, or, oh, your hair is too curly or too tight. And I'm like,
yes, nappy. They love the word nappy.
Hair is so versatile. Yes, it's a little more sensitive. Yes, it may need a little more nurturing, but 4C hair is beautiful.
Yes.
But within the natural hair community, you don't hear that as much. You don't hear it uplifted as much. Yeah.
Yeah, you're considered unlucky.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm wondering, when we go back to belonging, I'm wondering for y'all, well, let me start over. I really want to get this right in my head, y'all. How have y'all been able to foster a sense of belonging with your own hair?
Oof. took time. I say that. Uh,
Through
I
time, yeah.
it took time because I had to get out of that internalized racism, right? Because I was one of those people who was very focused on hair length at first, right? Of like,
Mm.
well, I got to get it a certain way, right? They're saying that heat and chemicals is bad. So if I go natural, then that means it's supposed to grow all the way down here now. And I had to learn to love my hair for what it was and embrace. I was one of those people who I say a little bit 4B, 4C, mainly 4C. So I saw also a little unlucky, right? Of like, well, I see these other girls going natural and they have looser curl patterns and they can do these wash and goes and it looks so good. And I was like, oh, I just want to do my puff all the time. Like, I don't even want to show you all the curls because it's not going to look like that. So I also had to learn to separate kind of what society thinks is beautiful to what I think is beautiful, and surrounding myself too with people who identify that as well. Because I think sometimes people don't realize the harm of like, we make these jokes of like, yeah, like I was saying earlier when Kristin was saying like nappy, right? Like we'll make these jokes of like, oh, your hair is nappy or it's hard to take care of. That kind of further fuels that hate of you should hate your hair, right? I should withdraw myself from the natural hair community because it's difficult to manage. Where no, if you learn how to, you learn your hair of like what it needs, how to help detangle it, how to help wash it. We all are very similar of just how we do our hair just looks different in different ways.
I think for me, I have to attribute a lot of my ways to my mom. Growing up, she's the one who fed like positive messaging into me. My mom was a great hair braider. Stylist, not so much, but braider, yes. She actually told me how to braid. I braided my own hair. So she would braid my hair as a young girl and she would pour into me like, you have beautiful hair. You have, your hair is nice. And she also kind of taught me like, you don't have to have such a strong attachment to your hair. The first time I cut my hair, I was actually in middle school. I asked my mom, I was like, can I get my hair cut? She was like, sure, it'll grow back. And I remember going to the salon to get my hair cut and coming home. And my dad is like, what did you do to your hair? Like, he's fussing at me, like, why did you cut all your hair off? And I was like, I wanted a change. And mom said I could do it. So why not? And so I was never really too attached because I knew it would grow back. And so I think I have to give a big shout out to my mom in regards to that. And then on top of that, me just learning how to style my hair on my own.
Yep.
Because again, my mom wasn't a stylist. And so once I started playing around with my hair and styling my hair based off of what I wanted, I just embraced it because it didn't matter what other people told me.
Right.
I knew I was cute. I was giving props to my mother for instilling in me that I don't have to be attached to hair. And then from there, I said, once I started doing my own hair and I learned how to style my hair, because my mom was a stylist. Once I learned how to style my own hair, that really boosted my confidence because I was styling it for me and what I like. It didn't matter what other people said.
Well,
that could just be the Aries in me, to be honest with you.
I think when we can start engaging our own process, right? And cultivating our own style, our own look.
Yep.
That is one of the ways that we start to connect with our own voice and our own creative expression, which, like you were saying, Kristin, with 4C hair, 4E, you're able to do whatever you want with your hair. You have so much creative expression just literally right there at your hands. And embracing that, I think, is one of the such a great path to self-belonging, because it's like this internal process for yourself, right? Of like, wait a minute, I can have agency over the way that I look, and I can also decide what feels beautiful for me. And then engaging with that process of braiding. I mean, I braid my hair every single day, of braiding every single night. As I do that, it's like a sacred process for me. There's something that, and it's also like, instead of it feeling like, oh, this is a pain, it's actually part of my self-care. It's almost like a meditation where I get to sit and I unwind from the day and I connect back with my body again. And in many ways, for me, I know I asked the question, how has your hair fostered a sense of belonging for you? But I'm also wondering, like, how you're able to foster belongingness with your hair. Like, I mean, they go back and forth with one another, because I know for me, I'm able to create belongingness with my hair by connecting back to my own cultural roots and feeling a real sense of cultural pride and feeling like, my body and my hair and everything about me, my skin tone, the shape of my eyes, the way my nose is, my lips, all of that, it looks like a pharaoh. It looks like if you go and you see the hieroglyphics in the tombs and the Valley of the Kings and Queens, they look like me and I look like them. And literally, I'm not kidding y'all, every single time that I sit down and work that hair, I feel like I'm able to touch an ancient culture. And that to me is one of the most sacred parts of my human body. Does that make sense to y'all? I don't know if that feels a little bit meta, but that truly is how I've decided to create belongingness for me on a universal level to my own heritage.
Yeah, because something that came to mind when you were saying this, Mona, is like almost like letting my hair be. I think sometimes when I find myself most frustrated is when I'm trying to conform her to do this certain thing, right? As opposed to I'm just letting her, like, people talk about, it's everybody's preference, right? Of like definition over volume. And I tell people all the time, I love volume over definition, right? Because to me, I feel like that's just letting me kind of connect with, like, just letting her do what she wants. If she wants to get bigger, go ahead. If you want to be a little freaky while you do at it, that's fine. If that's taken away from the formality or the uniform of what it's supposed to do, of rather just like letting her do what
because
she wants
again,
to
your
do.
hair is part of your body. And it is, as you're describing that, actually, I get fluttery in my stomach and I get goosebumps and like just this lightness, I feel uplifted as you say that, Danay. I genuinely mean that. It feels like you're letting your body guide you, like you're listening to what your body needs, what it wants that day. How does it want to show up? It's like, my hair wants to be in like a cute kind of top knot that's kind of funky, and I have my little curls that hang from the side, or my hair wants to be a little sleek back, or it just wants to be bigger than the screen that I sit in front of, so when I sit across from a client, my hair doesn't even fit in the frame, some days she just want to be all out there, and some days she want to be a little bit more subdued. And some days her gender is a little bit different too, there's even that, and it wants to be maybe in a hat or something like that, or even in a scarf. I love wearing scarves. And I know, Kristin, you're like that too. You have a scarf in right now, but yeah, and then it's just wild to me that there's a whole society out there of folks that are telling us, how we're supposed to show up, and that, this is too much. I think today you were saying that earlier, too much or not enough or not just right. And even when I say not enough, I'm talking about, it's like, okay, you got to show up and your hair's got to be this way. You can't have this protective style, or you can't have, any kind of way besides that plain look that you were describing earlier, Danay. And also the not enough is for folks who cover their hair, as we're going back to scarves. It's like, oh, but you can't cover your hair too and just take your hair completely out of the picture. Right.
That means you don't love it.
I mean, the great irony in that, so it's like, oh, okay. So you don't want me to just take my hair out of the picture either, because that means some kind of way to you too. And, not keeping people uncomfortable in some kind of way. Not that, we can't be doing that.
What I also find interesting is like some days when I am in a transition period between styles, like I'm trying to figure out what to do with my hair, and my hair, to your point, Danay, is just being, it's just out. I get so many compliments. And so what I've also started to do within my practice of therapy when I'm working with women, especially women of color, if I see them coming into the space and their hair may not fit the normative style, I'm like, look at that beautiful big hair. Look at them curls. Look, and I just call it out in the very beginning. And they're like, thank you. Like, for real. Yeah, come as you are, sis. It is okay. It is okay to show up as your authentic self, because you are beautiful as you are. You don't have to change for this space. This is your space.
And there's so many times where, folks are experiencing microaggressions and just avert racism, really. Let's call that what it is. towards hair. And that negatively impacts mental health, coming back, Kristin, to what you're talking about with your clients.
It
And
does.
so, speaking not only as Black women, but specifically, I'm talking about also as mental health therapists. What are you seeing, if anything, with clients regarding, how hair and mental health and belonging really kind of all come together for folks?
Perfectionism is heavy because I think in a way we're taught we're taught in these messages of like that sense when we're saying like you have to look upkept, you have to look uniform, all that stuff, is that if something looks out of place, then I'm spiraling, right? Then that kind of leads to an anxiety of that I think it trickles down to other areas of life of like, how am I showing up here? Am I doing my best? Am I doing everything I can? That might have started from just my hairstyle because I'm trying to conform to this image or to this job or this person or whatever it is, trying to conform to what you think of how I should look like.
Yeah.
So that's one that just kind of came out to mind just now, but you were saying.
And I want to piggyback on that too, Danay, because I think of it almost like Mona said before, when it comes to your hair is part of your body, but for some people, it could be a part of a mask, right?
Yep.
So like if they put on their makeup and they have their hair a certain way, they look put together so they can hide from the world what's really going on the inside. And so when they show up in this space, if they don't look put together, they may be like, oh, I let it come out today. I let people see I don't really have it all together. I'm like, you're human. You don't have to have it all together.
True.
It's okay how you show up in this world, because the hair and the makeup, if it don't look professional, then they feel
professional
like,
in quotes for those who are on audio. It's so interesting that you say that, because it's the times where maybe we don't put as much time and effort into our hair that we might say, oh, I'm not put together, because maybe I just washed it, put some gel and some leave-in really quickly and just let it air dry. And it's like, oh, I'm looking kind of a mess today. But really, it's like, no, that's not necessarily it. I just have a different look that's still beautiful because I'm beautiful and my lineage is beautiful and my culture is beautiful and my history is beautiful. And they didn't necessarily have to be pushed a certain way. Danay, you were talking earlier about how like, I'm just letting her guide the way today, and this is what she wanted to do, but yeah, Kristin, it is the sense that like we haven't put ourselves together in some way. I love what you're saying too about it's not just a part of our body, but also can be used as a mask. It really can.
Yeah. And to that too, like it makes me think about just identity in general, like of like self-esteem, self-concept, right? Because like you said, this is a part of who I am. If I'm not feeling put together here, if I don't feel like I fit in this space, then that may cause me to withdraw. That might cause me to isolate. That might cause me to feel less than because I'm feeling rejected, or I'm concerned about being rejected because of how I am showing up as it relates to my hair.
Yeah, I've had so many clients mention, if their hair is not put together, they don't feel like themselves.
Yep.
Or I need to get my hair done so I could feel better. So it's all connected to what's the state of their hair and what's their mental state. And I think, to be honest,
that is true. And sometimes when my mental state, to be fair, sometimes when my mental state, isn't so great, going back and doing my hair does make me feel better, but not necessarily as a mask, but as a reconnection to self.
It does make you feel better.
It's all about the intention and the energy behind it, Yeah.
And so many people make those social media posts and they'll be like, oh, I wasn't upset. I just needed my hair done, and it kind of speaks to that message of like how much.
Yeah.
Speaking to the fact of like, just needing my hair done speaks to the volumes of how much our hair is important to us, that I think sometimes can feel minimized, especially for people of color that often face those, like I think you were mentioning earlier, Mona, of microaggressions of like, it's just hair, I think that's an example. Like it's just hair, just something on your head, but that also can minimize too for people with that connection and that relationship to their hair of like, this is also a part of me. So.
And to that point, can we just talk about the magic that hair is? What I mean by that is it holds so much. Like when I did cut off my locks, I did feel a release behind that, because your hair does hold power and it holds a lot within it too. So however your mental state is, it's going to be reflected in your hair as it continues to grow out, and it's holding all that in. And I do feel like it is our connection to Mona's point, to our roots or to the sky or to like, it is our antennas.
You know, Lenny Kravitz talks about that many years ago in the 90s. He was known for his long, beautiful locks. And, you know, there was that kind of sex appeal that he had to him. And when he cut his locks off, people flipped out. And he said, look, there's an energy that we carry in our hair, exactly like what you just said, Kristin. He said, there's an energy that we carry with our hair. And I was holding on to an energy that I needed to release. And so I cut my locks off. And for him, it felt like he was starting anew. And so with that, if Lenny Kravitz said it and Kristin Reddick said it, hey, it's good enough for me. I'm just saying. So y'all know my favorite question of the podcast. And Kristin, we'll start with you because you've done this before. So what does belonging mean to you? And that doesn't mean how do you define it, you know, in terms of like, you know, some scholarly definition. I mean, for you personally, as we're talking about this topic, what does belonging mean to you and for you?
Yeah, I'm going to frame it in keeping hair in mind, keeping hair in the forefront. So belonging in hair specifically, what it means to me is creating a space where I can maneuver freely in my full authentic self, including my hair, but also allow others to come in freely as well. And being their authentic self, especially.
Yes. Danay, what does belonging mean for you?
I think for me, it's a feeling of acceptedness and of this feeling of acceptedness of knowing like I can be who I am. I can having people be who they are around me. And I guess to this topic of hair, just letting my hair be without feeling like I need to conform to what someone else wants.
Yes. You know, months ago, I did an episode on belonging and mental health. And one of the show's producers actually interviewed me. So they flipped the script on me a little bit. And can y'all believe I asked everyone the same question at the end of the episode? And I did not think he was going to ask me that question. It did not even occur to me. And he said, what does belonging mean to you? And my answer, you know, I haven't answered it since that day and I haven't asked it since that day. But my answer today is actually the same as it was back then. But this time in relation to hair is belonging means that I get to be as big as I damn well please. Okay. And that means my hair too.
There we go.
That I can go into a space. Maybe I won't fit sometimes, you know, maybe that hair won't fit. But it really is, for me, belonging means when it comes to hair specifically is the ability to, and the freedom for creative expression, you know, whatever that might be. And that includes being as big as I damn well please. So look, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. This was such a great conversation. I feel so seen, embraced, and celebrated just by way of hearing your own stories and feeling some of those common threads, even though we each have our own individual stories, having those common threads for those folks who are on YouTube, seeing a lot of nods from all three of us the whole time, like really feeling each other on this. And so that lets me know that I know that this is going to really resonate with so many people and hopefully educate some folks too, maybe who aren't as connected to this topic as we are. And I love y'all and I appreciate you. And thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. All of the show notes and links can be found on my website at drmonanour.com. That's drmonanour.com. Throughout most episodes, you'll hear me referring to the belonging model that I developed, which is represented by a belonging life map that helps you explore areas in your life where you feel more connection and areas where you might feel more isolation. And you can get a free copy of your own belonging life map on my website. Again, that's drmonanour.com. If you like the Belonging Reimagined podcast, please subscribe and consider leaving us a review. That can help more folks find us and keep more episodes coming. Until next time, I'm Dr. Mona. You're right where you belong.